I just want to say a thank you to Polly Gifford, who's at the back. Have a bit of hush. Shh. Right, I want to say thank you to Polly Gifford at the back for her organisation. Declared an emergency, so she contacted me and Claudine and a few of us and said, is it possible to put this in the programme, or can any of you do anything? It was only like about a month ago, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And I goes, we just need to have it and we need to make it happen. So really thank you for that and sorting everything out. Yeah. So we'll start the Q&A now.
Okay.
Over to Maggie.
Thanks. It gives me huge pleasure to introduce Fehinti Balogun, that's come from Manchester today to be with us. And I just think a huge round of applause to This is the second time I've had a chance to see the film, and I was just telling Fehinti that I saw all sorts of other bits, but I was crying more this time as well. The idea is really, I'm going to talk briefly to Fehinti, but we want to open it up really. You know, he's really keen for us to have a discussion in this space, and Lorna has really organised, you know, a safe space, a space where we can really discuss and share. But we were just talking a moment ago, and I was asking you how it was conceived in the first place. Yeah. Could you share a bit about how you began?
Yeah, absolutely. Like all great things, I got into an argument with my mum. I just done a big job. I did like my first lead in the West End. I was like, I'm him. Turns out I wasn't him. Because I thought my clout would get me in certain rooms, and it didn't. And so I tried to launch projects by myself, because we kind of taught that's how you do it. And they didn't take off, and they didn't do very well. So then I found a small collective of people. It was like I was working in Bath, and there was Extinction Rebellion in Bath, and they had the Heading for Extinction talk. I'd never been to anything like that before. I didn't know anyone really cared about this apart from me. So when I was like, "Rah, you all like really care. This is amazing." So then I joined, and I had this tiny part in this big Hollywood film. And so I was going to be away in the desert for ages. And so I spent all my time between these two jobs, just full on activism. Went away, flew away, ironically, to the desert, came back, there was this big protest. I said, "Hey, Mum, look, we took over the streets, aren't you proud?" And she went off. She's like, "Why are you ruining your career being part of these people? Don't you understand? It's different from them, but it's going to be for you. You're making a mess." I'm just like, "Mum, you don't understand. This is the most important thing in the world. Why are you not with me?" She's like, "I will never be one of those people." Me and my mum, we talk every week. Like, I see my mum every week. We talk quite often. We didn't talk for like a month, and every time we talked, it was just like, it was like speaking in tongues. It was sort of terrible. And then our last argument, I took my phone out and I recorded the entire thing. I put it under a pillow because I didn't want her to know. Because, you know, when you're arguing with your parents and you're like, "You said that," like, "I never said that," and I'll be like, "I've got receipts." So I recorded the entire thing, and then we came to like a conclusion of a sort, where she was just like, "I can't keep arguing with you, you're going to do what you're going to do." And I was like, hell yeah. Went back, listened to her argument, and I was like, oh God. One, I sound like a child. So, long story short, my mum makes some really good points, funnily enough. I take her recordings and I turn it into a lecture, which I take to black communities around London. I try and gather them. But what no one will ever hear, and I've never said this to anyone actually, is my side of those recordings, because I actually sound like I'm 6. It's awful. It's like, "No, Mum, you don't understand. You'll never understand." Honestly, No one will ever hear it. I'd swear on my life. Anyway, so I took my mum's recordings and I structured a whole lecture around them, around her point of view, because I realised no one had ever spoken from my mum's point of view before, from where she comes from and why it's really difficult to be involved politically anywhere, let alone with something as existential as the climate crisis, especially when we're often told the climate crisis from a very white point of view, which is often dehumanising and about polar bears and animals and how it's going to affect this country and not how it's affected the rest of the world for the last 30 years and will continue to do that. You know, I think that in climate doomism, it's fascism. It's the okay, well, what do we do to protect us? As opposed to every 10th of a degree means someone somewhere else is alive. Someone somewhere else has food. There was a whole other argument that it has been colonially erased. And because we don't see ourselves in that, because we don't talk about that or through that, it's not about us. We have other things to deal with. And so through my mum's voice recordings, I was like, oh, okay, so that's why there's this dissonance. But not only that, I realised through my mum's voice recordings that she did care, she just didn't know she cared. So we put it in the film. It's really interesting, like, my mum, my uncles, I have friends, aunts and uncles come over to this country, have been here for years, work, will send sums of money home, right? That sum of money gets home and fixes houses that have been, you know, torn down, make sure people have food, make sure what is that if not activism? Do you know what I mean? Like, but another form. My mum's been a climate activist years before I was, and she didn't even know. So that's how it started. It started as that, and then I met Polly, and Polly saw me at a talk, and she was like, have you thought about writing a play? And I was like, yeah. And then when she left, I was like, what the fuck? I've never written a play in my life. I had no inkling of writing a play. I don't, sometimes in life just say yes, innit? So I said yes. I remember I called everybody who'd ever written a play. I was like, yo, how? And so I made possibly the worst pitch anyone's seen. And then they invited me back for another one. But that kind of rolled on, and then the pandemic happened. So what would have been a play became this film, because I thought, I'm not going to wait for this to be made or someone to give me green light. Let's just make it. Let's get it out to as many people as we can. Let's do what we can with this, and then we'll take it on from there. And that's the story.
That's the result.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to talk about, one of the many things I love about this film is the way that you're able to talk about what's going on in the UK,
Yeah.
and then you very seamlessly link it back to what's going on in the rest of the world, and
Yeah.
particularly the countries that we have heritages in.
Yeah.
And I just think that's a huge challenge,
Mm-hmm.
and I love the way you did that. In We Out Here, both, I think Elaine Mullins, to come down. Both Elaine and I, we've been very preoccupied with how do you have a bigger conversation. Mm-hmm. And, you know, Elaine, Fehinti got to see the exhibition.
Hello, oh, nice to meet you.
Elaine did.
Because everything you were saying.
And Elaine
Relevant.
was the artist that did the piece about the Congo and the big African. Yeah. So we've been very preoccupied with that, and so I have lots of questions about the role of artists and how much can we realistically do, and you know that might have to be a conversation not over tea but over a stiff drink and some food. Yeah. But I just wanted to talk about that relationship. You know, that how do we?
No, I'm fine, I'm good, yeah.
How do we process that ourselves, first of all, and then translate it? So I think, our mouths were watering when you talked about plantain. There was sighs in the room, but I'm very busy with that as an artist, of how do I put something out that is going to affect a change and have those conversations. And I know for Elaine it's a
similar thing, because
Yeah.
we've had these conversations, and that's the frustration of it, that we we make artwork, we make work that's really visible and clear, and then we have these conversations. And then for us, the frustration is we can't offer any solutions. All we can say is be aware of it and see this. And this is a really ugly story: children digging with picks and being buried alive, so that we can have our mobile phones. You know, and it's all part of the same story. It's not, you know, that what the West likes to do is to compartmentalize them so that there's little segments, and really they're the symptoms of the one system, which is, for me, the racist capitalist system. So can I just say how much I enjoyed the way you were able to weave these issues in and breaking it down into those categories that people can recognise universally. Oh, thank you. But that they often think it's not for them. Racism isn't about them, etc.
So that's my question. It really is a question. Where do we go from here? What do we do? I mean, you touched on it towards the end.
I need a pencil and paper just so I make sure I don't miss that point. I need to touch on the power of the artist before we go on. So just remind me of that question, just because we skipped over it, and I think it's important. I always speak from self. Self is useful, helpful, because it doesn't victimize. It is vulnerable, and it's a sharing. And you cannot blame a sharing. You cannot feel blamed by someone sharing, I don't think. That's how I work when I speak about anything bigger than myself. So I would share. I'm trying to make a film at the minute. I'm trying to adapt this. I'm trying to make it bigger so more people see it. And I got invited to, I did a TED Talk last year. I'm going to the TED Global Conference. It's going to be hard because they will have people similar to us there who are interested in the work, doing the grassroots work. They will also have the CEOs of Shell and ExxonMobil. And it is a violent thing to place those contrasting sides almost as equals. Because one is saying I have a right to live and the other says you don't. And I don't think that's equal. And so one of the things I'm having to prepare for is the worst. And that is to be character assassinated with a lack of information that they can find quantifiable. And what I mean by that is, what did you do? What did you achieve? Why is it good? Why should I do it? Why should I care? These are very capitalist colonial constructs of worth. And I have inherited a need to be worthy in order to prove that I have the right to exist. That is something I've inherited from my parents and grandparents who come into this country, from my situation of where I've grown up in. I need you to know that I am valuable enough to be here. And so in preparation for that, I need the quantifiable. I need the facts, the figures of how we achieved, what we achieved with this film, what we structurally achieved in society. So with that fear, I went to one of our impact managers and I said, hey, listen, TED team have told me to prep for this so they don't tear me down. Go back to me. And they were like, it's really difficult because sometimes the effect you have on a person's soul is not quantifiable. And I thought, wow, okay, now this is the power of art, right? The thing I need to do is to not bring them the thing they think they need, but to change the idea of what they think they're looking for. And you can only really do that through art. And art is a broad thing. Art isn't just the things we make, the things we see. It is literature, it's the way we speak, it's the images we have in our heads. And I often think when you have a good book, when you have a really good book, it redefines things you didn't know existed. It gives you words for experiences you didn't know you had. That's what we do when we speak as artists. It's we relate and relay things they didn't know that they needed or had. So now I know that my job going over there is not about how much do we achieve, how much is quantifiable. I need to tell them the stories of people that changed their life and the way they thought about life from seeing this film. I need to tell them about how they see their worth and value, about how they see their heritage. And I need to tell them that change is based on that and not just the numbers that aren't really that consistent. I think the quantifiable soul is something that probably doesn't exist. And that's a thing that I will be challenged as an artist and a communicator to do whilst I'm there. The transformative power of art goes deeper than I think we understand. And I think the power of it is understood by people in power because they strip us of it.
I agree.
And so if they do that so consistently and so strongly, we must believe the opposite is true, that it is as powerful as they are willing to strip away from us. You see a film and you realise it is the only way you can completely understand somebody's point of view who you've never met before, who's had an experience you've never seen before. I cannot overstress the power of art and language and communication and conversation, of imagination, being able to visualise a future that doesn't exist. We are shackled by barriers that we are given. If we oversee those barriers, if we look beyond them, we're able to imagine a future that we can have. It is easier for them, and I say them because we know who they are, it is easier for them to give us barriers, to say that this is possible, and we internalise that, and we go, well, okay, well this is what has been done, and this is the only system that works. Capitalism is the only system that works. This is how it's always worked. Nothing can change. And doing that, we erase all the things that do work and have changed and do exist, that have been erased. As artists, we communicate that. I think that is the power of art, and I think in my practice, I link whatever that is to the grassroots movements that are happening now. I take the connection and the understanding, and what we see in the film, like I always try and bring it back to your kitchen. If you can understand global heating and a lack of food from your kitchen cooking plantain, I've done my job.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? I need that conversation to be in the living room, on the table, in the couch, bringing the global local. And there aren't many other forms of communicating that can do that other than art. That's in my practice. That is what I do. Is because it's too overwhelming. Otherwise, it's too overwhelming to think, oh, this problem is happening here, and this problem is happening here, and this. And what am I supposed to do? And actually, they're all the same problem. As we say in the film, and as I continue to say, climate change is not the issue; it's a symptom of the issue. As is sexism and racism and all these other things. They are structural issues, and that working against that structure is the work. So you'll find yourself working against the structure. You're doing the work. You're doing the work. Identify the work. Speak about it. Amplify it. And connect. That's part of my practice. So in answer, you didn't even ask the question, but in terms of the power of art and what we can talk about at another time, that it is more significant and more powerful than you know. And the actualization of it, the weaponization of it, I think is the next step. Had it been 20 years ago, had I been doing this work 20 years ago, I would have left it there. But we are where we are right now, and where we are is extreme. So the point is, I'm making this thing in order to go over here, in order to connect there, in order to make sure you know that person's name, in order to make sure you know that person's name, in order to make sure you can identify where in my life can I consistent is the important word here, not overarchingly, not spark flat, consistently resist. Why does that exist for me? How do I maintain myself in that? That's the weaponization work that furthers the work that the artist does. That's my answer to that. And with the film, as I said, it's like making a global local, man, and understandable, and not like this thing that's too much, or it makes you feel stupid or guilty or powerless. I'm done with the powerlessness. I hate it. I hate it so much. But I have to allow myself to feel powerless in order to push past it. I have this amazing therapist. She's sick, and she was telling me about the sort of roller coaster of emotion, right? And she was saying sometimes people get stuck here. We need to move through here. This is it. We move. It's always a movement. Those emotions are important. I said to her, it's like, I'm experiencing climate anxiety, this, that, and the other. And she said, you know, I would never steal this from you. And I was like, yo, that's why I'm paying you. I beg you, steal it from me. And she was like, no, these things I can teach you to manage, I can teach you to minimize, but I think your practice, your work thrives on your ability to care. The fact that you care means you see the world for how it is, not how you're taught to see the world. And these important things that push us forward. And I just, art for me as an artist, as a practitioner, just making those things understandable, simple, and empowering people. That's my practice. I feel like I've gone off the rails a bit.
No, it's brilliant.
Answer your question.
No, not at all. I'd love to open it to the audience in a second, but just so I'm hearing what you're saying, that we make art to move the story along, to touch people in ways that we do. But what's interesting, so here, this is a group of people that I know, some of you really well. We're involved in many things. We're doing a lot of activism in many ways. But I'm very aware that when I made the decision to make that piece, I was putting in my mind who I wanted to talk to. And it wasn't actually my connections here, because they know this story, the story that... And so that's a conflict I have all the time. I mean, we do what we do, but I'm longing for the day when I don't have to do that, you know, when I don't have to stand here and shout, look at this. And perhaps that's just my fantasy that will ever happen. I feel an obligation, if you like, to really talk these, what I think are really important subjects. And we do it in the, Elaine is the same, when anyone comes in, we take the opportunity to talk.
Yeah. I echo that. I feel now that it's my obligation to speak about it because I know about it. I can't unknow it. And once I know it, I have to share it. Or, and when I make the work, I've made work for now the last 15 years, and I hide the political. I make it because it's something I'm interested in, but I don't necessarily share it with other people. Where in this case, we had the opportunity to make work that spoke to the concerns and to the realities, and I took the decision that, well, if people don't like it, it doesn't mean that it's not true. And if people don't want to hear it, it's not going to go away. So I did, like you, I feel a duty now. I feel an obligation, and that's what Nina Simone said. If you're an artist, you have a duty to tell the world, and to change the world where you can. That's why we're here.
Do you see it as a duty? I mean, is that now where your head is at?
Yeah.
Yes.
It's okay.
Yeah, it's now our duty. I mean, when you spoke earlier and in the film about Ken Saro-Wiwa, I knew very much about that story. I followed it very much years ago, and I remember being outraged, and I remember bringing it up to and talking to people, and they had no idea, and they went, "Oh yeah, but we all need oil," and and I said, "Yeah, but at the cost of somebody's village, at the cost of somebody's landscape, the cost of people's lives, and then being executed for trying, like you say, the most important climate activist, and they shut him down." So I think it's really good that you remind people it's a wider conversation in the mainstream. So thank you for that.
Oh, thank you.
Sorry, I just want to say something. But surely you should be a human being before an artist, and your want to create a work needs to go beyond feeling responsible for an entire group or tribe of people, in a sense. So I mean, it's just to answer what you're saying with a piece of work that you've done, is free yourself and just say, what would I want to do as a human being first? And I think if you do that more, then the kind of subject of the particular art for cause, I think will come perhaps a little freer. Just a thought.
No, it's an interesting point.
Yeah,
it's not the process, but I take on board what you said. Yeah.
I wonder. It's funny because you can't like end activism. You don't like wake up one day and it's like, sick, completed it. It's done. That was good. For dinner kind of thing. Like it will take of you as much as you are willing to give, which often is more than you have.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, as a man who was burnt out many a time, I can only speak from what I'm trying to learn, I guess. And one of the things I talk about all the time is like, what feeds you or like fills up your cup? And I'd love to ask the both of you, like, what allows you to keep going? Because for me, my theory, or what I say, because when, like, okay, for instance, people ask me like, oh, how do I talk to my family? My family don't care, da, da, da. And I was like, you have to ask yourself, is today the day that I want to give that energy? Because sometimes talking to your family about something important is like making a beach, right? You are the shore and they are the mountain. It's not going to happen in a day. It's not going to happen in 2 days. You're going to have to erode that mountain, that cliff face for a long time before you get that beach. And so you have to decide, is today the day I'm going to give that extra bit? And it has to be a choice. Because otherwise, like what? You ain't going to talk for a month. Like, you'll just argue. And it's funny because with my mum, like, she gets, I don't know if she'll admit this, or I don't know if she'll say it. She gets triggered by stuff because she grew up where she grew up. She has some very colonial ideas about the world, as we all do, as I do, I internalise. And so, you know, you bring up gender politics, sexuality, or any of these things that, you know, through Judeo-Christian colonial ideas, very difficult things to deal with. Boom, touch the nerve, because you are questioning someone's own identity. It is no longer about what's important to you. You suddenly have put everything they believe in into question immediately. They're on flight response. They're giving you more energy than you could ever possibly imagine. So it's like, hey, I'd love you to call me them. It's like, them? Who? What? Then what am I? Then what are we? The words don't matter anymore? And you're like, yo, that's not what I'm meant at all. Like, there's all this other stuff. And then it's like, one, you have to allow for that reaction. It is so important and vital to allow people to be the most volatile versions of themselves and hold them through it, as opposed to blaming them for suddenly having to question their whole life. As an activist, or as anybody that cares about something, there's stages. For me, there were always stages. They were like, I really care, why don't you care? And you get into a conversation and like, well, I don't know, I've never thought about it. Well, you're stupid then if you've never thought about this, is the most important thing in the world. And you go through these stages of like, oh, I'm angry at the world because you don't see the world how I see the world. And then you realise that actually they see the world in a very different lens through their own particular experiences that you've never, till I listened to my mum's voice recordings, had never thought about. Realising it's all the same thing, but through a different lens, right? There is such a need for the ability to allow that to happen. For people to be angry and upset and dissonant. So going back to what we were saying about making work because you feel obligated, it's like, what fills up your cup? Like, it's not every day we can do that. We should. I think we have a responsibility. If you call yourself an artist or a maker, or a human, there is a responsibility to be part of the society that you're in and challenge and change it. That is there. We live in a system that drains us our energy, so what we have left over when we are trying to live and eat and survive is very little. And that very little then is supposed to be used to understand and change. It's like, how can you do that? I haven't got very much energy. Like, we need to understand that that's a system that we live in, and I need to acknowledge that instead of being like, go and do X, Y, Z if you just come from work from a long shift, that needs to be explained. But then in that midst of that, when can I choose? That's why I said earlier about being consistent rather than being big. The consistency is finding the thing that you can do in your day to do those other things. But to ask that question for yourself, you have to see a responsibility. Do you see what I mean? Like, in order for me to find the thing I can do consistently, I have to see there is a need to find the thing to do consistently. So coming back, it's like I can't always make work if I'm not fed Like I need to do the other art that isn't necessarily specifically about that, so I can come and do this other thing. It's always connected, because